Hello everyone. This guide is intended as a quick, basic guide about how SimulationCraft works and how everybody can use this to simulate their own personal stat weights during progression. This was recorded just before Legion expansion launch and is mainly focused on players doing DPS. First things first. SimulationCraft.org is where you download the program we're going to use for this. The current public version is still for the latest expansion, 6.2.3 patch. So if you want to use this before they come out with the next version, you can use their nightly builds, which you can get under downloads, and then clicking the Windows builds every few days here button. I will also drop a link in the description. It will link you to their repository where you can grab any of the files and install it. I usually use the .exe. Now that SimulationCraft is installed, you have to choose what character you want to simulate. You do this under Import. There's a bit of an issue with the Import tab at the moment, since Blizzard recently remade their armory. You can go here and search for the character you want to import, but generally it might bug. So the safest bet is to click Control-I, which will open up the import character, which you can just click here and import. If you want to simulate another character, you could go to Sample Profiles, and here you have a list of all playable classes. And you can just pick one here. These are under Tier 18, which would mean Hellfire Citadel. And then you have a couple of Tier 19, which would be Emerald Nightmare. So we could pick the Shaman Elemental here, for instance. Here you see the action priority list. They are basically your priority list for your rotation. There is a default talent structure in, or if you import it from Armory, it will use your current talent build. You can change these here. You can also change artifact setup here. The easiest way to do this is to go to the Wowhead artifact calculator, and then once you've picked out the artifact setup you want to run with, you click link, and then you can grab the artifact string right there and just paste it over into SimulationCraft. And at the bottom here you can see item level, stats, etc. You can change these if you wanted to. The default profile being around 840 item level for pre-Emerald Nightmare gear. Alright, now we're on the Options tab. Here you can choose options for what you want to run. I will go through what I think is most important. There is of course a lot of options here that I won't go through, but you can find information about these online if you wish to. To begin with, iterations is very important. It's just how many times you want to simulate the boss fight. I usually try and go with 250,000 when I'm simulating my stat weights. If you're doing something that isn't as precise, you can go lower if you want to, but remember that this will increase how long time the simulation also takes. The fight length, 450 seconds is what I usually run with. That's default. That's 7.5 minutes. So 20% and 450 second fight length would mean that it would vary between 5 and 9 minutes. Fight style. This is what type of fight you want to simulate for. The default is patchwork. Hectic ad cleave has regular movements and ad spawning. And you can read all this here in details. Ultraxion has periodic stuns and raid damage, and etc. etc. Then we have the player's skill. The simulator basically just removes global cooldowns here and there randomly in the simulation, or delays things by a global cooldown here and there depending on which settings you go. If you go by elite, it will ignore nothing. If you go by Archfire as hot, it will ignore about 50% of the global cooldowns, or delay them. Number of enemies. Usually boss fights have one boss. Raid boss, of course, or you can also go 5-man heroic or max level player, whatever you want to simulate against. Let's go to the buffs/debuffs tab. Here, this used to be a lot bigger, but obviously they removed all buffs in Legion, so mainly the important thing here is Bloodlust. You want to keep on. Now to the interesting things. Scaling. You want to enable scaling at the top, and then you want to scale over DPS, of course. Now, you want to choose what stats you want to scale over. You don't want to pick too many here. this increases the simulation time by quite a lot. So running more than like if you would toggle all of them, it would take you maybe 20 minutes to simulate, which would be a long time. What you usually want to do is you want to take your main stats, intellect, agility, or strength, and your 4 secondary stats, crit, haste, mastery, and versatility. And then basically you're done. You just hit the simulate button at the bottom right corner of your screen. And this will take a little while, so I will skip the simulating. Since I'm doing 250,000 iterations, it will take a little bit of a while. And I'll jump forward a bit. Alright then, our simulation is complete. And we got this results tab showing up. So there's a lot of information here, but we will go to what I think is the important part. Here you see your normalized stat weights you simulated. So in this situation we would have intellect, then versatility, then crit, then haste, then mastery. You also see your error here, 0.03. It's pretty low, but since we ran many iterations, like 250,000, I expected to see a lower error. What you can do is do this simulation a couple of times and then do an average, and you will get a better idea of what the stat weights actually are. Other than that, you can see how much damage came from which spells down here. You can see your DPS graph with when you popped cooldowns and how that should look. And a lot of other information. What spells you spent time casting, how many seconds you spent doing each spell, and all different things like that. And what you would do then, if you think you're doing too little DPS, you can open up your Warcraft logs after a raid, and you can compare how much of my DPS was from Lava Burst. Oh, the simulation says 22%, but mine was 17%. Maybe I'm not optimizing my Lava Bursts or similar situations. And time spent casting, you can check that as well. There is a lot more information that I didn't go through, but this is the bare minimum, the basics of SimulationCraft, how it works. Alright, now we are done with simulating everything. If you want to import this easily into the game, what you can do is you can use an add-on called Pawn to show how much of an upgrade an item is in the tooltip by using the stat weights you've just simulated. So, you would go to Scale at the bottom here, you would go to Manual, and you would go to Create a new scale from scratch. You would put in a name for it. Emerald Nightmare Elemental, for instance. Click Alright. And then put in the stat weights. So we'll put Intellect at 1. We would put Crit at 0.76. We would put Haste at 0.73. We would put Versatility at 0.81. And I believe Mastery was 0.76. And then we're done with that. We could hit normalized values here. It doesn't matter because we are already normalized them by intellect at 1. You would then go to scale, make sure show this scale in tooltips is enabled. What you can then do is you can open your dungeon journal and see on any item or any items in your bag how much of an upgrade that item is for the spec. If it doesn't show anything, then it is because that item is not an upgrade for your spec.